So I think if you have a worry about Ohio State outside of special teams, I had like a 8-minute conversation with a kicker on Wednesday. It's probably the pass defense. Is that fair to say? Yes or no, real quick?
Yes.
Is that fair to say? Yes or no?
Yep.
Okay. So how great is the worry with the potential pass defense? I'll start with by saying I talked to Greg Schiano when we talked to guys on Wednesday. He was talking about the safeties a little bit. He thinks Damon Webb is playing very well this year, sort of being the guy who makes the calls in the secondary. He thinks Jordan Fuller's coming on. It's kind of the stuff you talk a lot about, Tim, with like the camaraderie and working together as a group, like you mentioned on the offensive line. He thinks that's important with safeties, and they're starting to get there a little bit now that Jordan Fuller's definitely the guy at the other safety spot. I feel like there's no Malik Hooker. I get that. I think I believe that a little bit. I think everybody's getting better. I think it's still the number one worry, but I'm not as worried as maybe I would have been a couple weeks ago. I don't know. Like I'm starting to feel a little bit better about it. Does that make sense? Are you feeling a little bit better, or is it still kind of sticking in the back of your mind?
I'm still worried a bit, but maybe not as much as I would be. And honestly, I don't even think it has much to do with the defensive backs themselves. I think it's got as much to do with the defensive line. I mean, if you have a really good defensive line, the number one byproduct, it makes the secondary's life easier. If you got Nick Bosa running down Trace McSorley and making his life difficult, harassing him, that ball is not going to come out as cleanly as it normally would from a clean pocket. I mean, that's football 101, but if with Nick Bosa playing as well as he is, that should make life easier. And although the pass defense gave up some big yards to Nebraska at the second half, I wonder if they were like experimenting a little more as opposed to the same concepts they were running in the first half when they shut out Nebraska.
Yeah, Schiano sort of asked about that, and that's what I wrote about after that game. He was sort of saying, well, yeah, but he wasn't really panicked about it. When you look at the Penn State game from last year, Bill, Trace McSorley dropped in a touchdown on Garyon Conley. He hit a big throw on Marshawn Lattimore down like the 5-yard line, and those were great cornerbacks.
Yeah.
So especially when you think about it in the context of Trace McSorley and what he can do throwing the ball with some decent Penn State receivers, what do you think about the secondary?
I'm still pretty nervous about it. And two things worry me. Who's going to cover Saquon Barkley when Saquon Barkley is out in the pattern? I don't even know if there's like 3 guys in the country maybe who can cover him one-on-one. I'm not talking about having that kind of talent. I'm just talking about like schematically, what do you do when the running back is out catching passes, because that burned them against Oklahoma. And then back shoulder throws worry me. Indiana marched down the field and them just throwing it to the back shoulder, And Richard Lego was throwing great balls. Trace McSorley can throw a great ball. That's his bread and butter. He's going to chuck it up and put it in a spot where his big receivers can go get it. Ohio State's corners have been better since the Indiana game. I don't think they were a liability against Oklahoma. It was more than the linebackers. But I'm not ready to say today that they fixed everything, and I worry about them being able to cover guys that big for an extended game one-on-one when Trace McSorley is going to keep throwing jump balls.
It is interesting to think about what do you do with Barkley in the pass game, and then we know McSorley can run it. So it's almost like you sort of want to have like not spies, but guys keeping an eye on both of that. But you've got a whole offense to stop, So Penn State does a lot of really good things offensively. It's going to be a challenge for this defense, but they shut Penn State down in a lot of ways a year ago, but then they gave up a couple gigantic plays, some of those throws we talked about. So they don't have to put up 500 yards of total offense. If they can hit a big play here, a big play there, that might be enough to beat Ohio State. Tim, Doug, Bill, thanks for watching. Get ready for Ohio State Penn State week. It's going to be fantastic.